this will truly be the golden age of America. That's what we have to know.
Trump has the momentum. Since he is not trying to please anybody but the public, he'll do what's necessary.
What do you think Trump needs to do in this first 100 days?
I am particularly concerned with the need for somebody to vigorously subdue the FBI and bring them back to where they're supposed to be.
And obviously, there's the CIA. How do you go in and clean up an organization whose business is covert operations?
Money.
Take their money.
Yeah, that could be cut off with some astute work with the Justice Department to clamp down on that so that some bad habits get cured.
If Donald Trump asked you to come to D.C. for a 20-minute meeting in his office, what would you tell him?
Trust your instincts, because I think they're right. The other side was against him. He's polarizing, but he's what we need because we don't buy into this other thing that is being offered us by the Democratic Party. It was people saying this is our last chance before this mess gets too far gone.
Now, I have two young boys, and I'm thinking about what they're going to need in this world. But more importantly, what can we do so they can become men?
Iron can be very brittle or very soft, but you have to temper it. You do not do boys any favor by trying to coddle. Train hard. Think about your obligations to your society. Life is not long. You will find that out when it's almost over. So work on making it something that is glorious that people will remember you for.
Hey, I know investing in crypto is scary. It takes a real leap of faith because there are so many scams, rug pulls, and bad actors out there. It's a dangerous business, which is why 95% of people lose all their money. Well, that's why I created the London Real Investment Club, so you can access the hottest deals on the planet and use the crypto bull market to create the generational wealth that you deserve. Join my team of over 100 people from around the world that are making millions of dollars behind the scenes investing in blockchain, AI, Web3 games, DeFi, Bitcoin, and more. Don't miss out. Click the link below to book a call with one of my team now. But hurry, this bull market will end soon.
I know investing in crypto can be scary. That's why you gotta join the investment club. Pull the trigger. Let's do this.
The world is changing. Inspiration is everywhere. It has never been so easy to connect, share, and bring people together. We're learning from others and finding the best in ourselves. Challenging our beliefs. Sharing our vulnerability. Overcoming our fears. Transforming ourselves so we can transform the world. How far can we go?
This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is... This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Judge Joe Brown, the former lawyer, criminal court judge, and celebrated TV personality. You began your career in Memphis, Tennessee, breaking barriers as the city's first African-American prosecutor before transitioning to director of the Public Defender's Office. Then, in 1990, you were elected to the state criminal court, where you became known for your innovative approach to keeping young people on the right path. You rose to national prominence during the reopened case of James Earl Ray, the man convicted of assassinating Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. This caught the attention of television executives, leading to the creation of your hit show, Judge Joe Brown, which became one of the most popular programs in daytime TV history. You have said that President Trump faces an uphill battle to restore order in the United States, faced with chaos at the southern border and the looming threat of World War III with Russia. Judge Brown, welcome to London Real.
Well, I'm glad to be here.
Well, it's great to have you here. Let's jump in and start with Trump because we're pretty fresh off this election. And I saw you talking before the election. I haven't seen any interviews of you after the election. And I'm curious if you could tell me, what was that process for you like? The last 2 weeks, the uncertainty on the day, and then how did you feel the day after and even the subsequent last 2 weeks? What's it been like?
Well, the last week before the election, I spent almost the entirety of it in Georgia, not Tennessee. I toured from North Carolina to Florida campaigning for Trump. And for that 7-day time period, I talked to a lot of people. And by the time I got through with it, I was pretty sure that Trump was going to win, and not just win, but really get in there and get a landslide. And he seems to have gotten more popular votes than any other Republican candidate for president in American history. I saw things on the ground where people were not concerned about what we were getting from the Democratic Party, which basically was some things that pushed the social agenda that, shall we say, did not resonate with ordinary people. The abortion issue had a lot made of it, but most people were not moved by that. The whole thing about the gay rights thing did not move many people, particularly as it had morphed into the LGBTQIA plus rainbow cult, which is literally seeking to impose itself as the new faith of the United States, which is something that our Constitution says is a no-no, but they're trying to do it. People didn't like that at all. They were very disturbed about the fact that their sons were drifting, like daughters going to major universities or succeeding in life, and the sons smoking a blunt down on the couch, playing vid games down in on the first floor of the home and not moving out. And they didn't like that, particularly mothers. And a lot of the minority community had been fed a bit of a bill of goods by the Democratic Party, which was essentially using some things that they put in place 180 years ago when they were the party of American slavery. And those were not pleasant to see once you became aware of them when it came to controlling people. But in this case, the plantations weren't about growing cotton, they were about making rainbows. And that didn't resonate too well with many people. The cities are chaotic. There's crime that is just rampant around the place. Nobody seems to have a purpose. You go to cities where once you saw a thriving nightlife, you see empty streets. You see restaurants that once were thriving now have a limited number of customers and small staffs. And people seem to be down and somewhat depressed. So it's what is going to happen here? Where are we going? Why are we in Ukraine? Why are we doing what we're doing over in the Middle East? It doesn't make any sense. You're creating all of these enemies. You've got a set two that is in place to happen 2027 with the People's Republic of China, but you've got 1.5 million military-age Chinese males who have come across the border that are known. You have people that would love to be able to shoot down a B-1B bomber or a B-2 Spirit, and they don't have the anti-air facilities, but they don't need them. They can walk across the border with military-grade explosives, and our 911 becomes child's play because nobody has to hijack an aircraft, helicopter in, or land in rubber boats from a servicing submarine. So it's not a pretty thing. You have job problems. We have a situation in the United States which is unique in the industrial world, and it's this. We do not have any coherent programs to deal with the obsolescence of the typical worker in the face of industrial technology and computerization. So we have a prison system that is morphed from crime control to labor control, considering that labor is a commodity, and you do three things with that: cut back production, subsidize the producer, and you store the surplus. In our case, in a jail cell instead of a grain silo. The subsidy is the welfare check. Cutting back of production is what you get with hip-hop, gangster rap, all sorts of things that are spread through what Elon Musk has termed the legacy media that justify and glorify dysfunction. So you get a bunch of people who take themselves out of the labor market and quickly deposit themselves in the human warehouses known as penitentiaries. It is absurd and that is dysfunctional, but nobody's doing anything about it. And it's basically also hooked up with an effort to effeminize the country. Humanity depends on its men and women cooperating and doing the thing that over the last anthropologists tell me 250,000 years we've done to get it together and move from cave to condo. But now all of a sudden men are obsolete, we're toxic, all this, all that, and the young men are saying to hell with it, we're not going there. And the rest of society, including the mothers and a lot of single women, are wondering why the situation has gotten so grave, and they're saying something's wrong with what we are being fed, so it's time to turn it around. Ukraine. The United States Constitution, you may be familiar with it, has an Article 6. It says, ratified treaties are part of the supreme law of the land, along with the U.S. Constitution, etc. Now, we have an interesting treaty negotiated by then President Bill Clinton. It was ratified by the U.S. Senate a few weeks later, and it was in 1999. It basically sets up a relationship between the United States and Ukraine that says each will apprehend, detain, and extradite any party wanted by the criminal process of the other. Well, early November 2020, right before the election we had, the Ukraine Supreme Court unredacted a long organized crime indictment. It had named Joe Biden, president of the now president of the United States, and his son Hunter Biden in a long series of counts for various and sundry felonies. So are we in Ukraine for purposes of furthering the interest of the United States or for a quid pro quo development so that President Joe Biden doesn't get out of office with a hanging series of organized crime indictments over his head, which would require we send him over there, which is not going to happen because he was commander-in-chief with too much left in his head as to what's going on in our vital interest of the United States, NATO, the free world, and all that other stuff. So that will be a nasty diplomatic incident.
And Judge,
Meanwhile,
if we jump on that, do you think President Trump will pardon Hunter, and will he pardon Joe Biden?
I don't think he should.
Okay. But will he?
I was participating about 2 years ago in something that Fox did. Myself and two very experienced lawyers out of Manhattan who had been prosecutors and defense lawyers. And the subject was, is there probable cause to indict Hunter Biden on Foreign Agents Registration Act violations? We call it FARA, F-A-R-A. The randomly selected jury, which I think they did a good job on getting together, found that there was. We called and swore in as a witness the technician who worked on not the one, but the 3 Hunter Biden laptops, and he had downloaded them. So we got to, at our leisure, peruse the 3 laptops and their contents. Aside from the salacious things that were on there, since Hunter fancied himself a amateur porn artist, and he was doing home porn with some of the daughters of some of the well-connected politicos in the United States. Aside from that, we saw stuff that during wartime would have been flat-out treason. And when I say saw, that included some White House tapes that now involve video componentry, not just the sound as it was when that became famous through the Nixon debacle. And there were some very disturbing things on there. That thing with the black box behind the vet in the garage. We saw email discourse saying, did your friends get to see what was in the black box? There'll be more next week. And we find that at the time he was vice president, he did not have the authority to do what a president does under the American Constitution, which is classify or declassify anything he chose to for any reason, by any means he chose to declassify it, which debunks all of that myth with the special prosecutor Smith down in Florida about the documents in his home. And by the way, the 1988 U.S. Supreme Court case is United States Department of the Navy versus Egan, E-G-A-N. And there are numerous concurring opinions from the U.S. Supreme Court. And essentially they say, quote, the President of the United States may classify or declassify any document he chooses by any means he chooses, partially or fully. He has this authority as commander-in-chief of the military, wherein he can essentially override generals and admirals. And he is also the chief diplomat of the United States. Let's say that there is a top secret matter and the French ambassador is talking to him about something. He may say, look, we came up with something. It's top secret. The CIA developed this, but you need to know it because we need to cooperate. See, he has that authority.
And so you think Trump should go ahead and prosecute Hunter and Joe Biden?
He should prosecute both of them, but he might want to pardon them after the thing went on, or he should release, at the very least, a full report on what has been developed.
Okay.
But people don't tend to take things seriously in the United States until there's an indictment, which under our law is simply an accusation of wrongdoing. There is still a remaining presumption of innocence, and I think a little bit of payback would be in order because as a criminal court judge, a criminal defense lawyer, prosecutor, and before that, somebody that dealt with poverty law, I am very disturbed at the evaporation of our Constitution and its Bill of Rights when it comes to due process of law. Our tramping on the First Amendment has gotten to be extraordinary, and I've never seen anything like it in my years, and it's been 55 years since I studied it in UCLA with political science. I've never seen anything like that in a half century, nor in my studies of the entirety of the country's history. We have a thing with the Fourth Amendment, our sacrosanct search and seizure. You have to have probable cause and a warrant. We have had that evaporated. The Fifth Amendment, with its imposition of due process on the federal government, I've seen that go downhill. And I know from my practicing criminal law, say 40 years ago, I saw the very start of some legislation that Joe Biden, Eastland, Stennis, and Byrd were responsible for that allowed federal prosecutors to implement a prosecution knowing there was no realistic chance of a conviction, but for the sole purpose of impeding or ruining or stifling dissent. And
Okay.
I think
So
that
they
is
should
not
be-
the way this country works.
They should be indicted. Everything should be made public, but maybe then he pardons them so the whole world doesn't have to watch us do this for a former president and make us look bad. I think those are some really good points. I haven't heard anyone make the argument. I think you make some great points. Judge, I'm curious, what do you think Trump needs to do in this first 100 days? And how do you feel about his picks? Was Gates pulling out a setback? Do you think the rest of his picks are going to be approved?
I think they'll wind up being approved because the Republican Party will be in the majority in the Senate. I think it would be something that people will be very reticent about going against Trump now with his landslide. The American press is not saying what it is, but it's a landslide. It's a real bad landslide under the circumstances. And if you look at a map and you discount the states that are blue and look at what's in those states that's blue, you see there are some major metropolitan areas, but you see most of the North American landmass is red. And we've already had a civil war. England had a...
I joined the investment club because we are in the biggest wealth transfer in history. The investment thesis here is we believe that early stage Web3, metaverse and AI investments represent the hottest opportunities on the planet. I've been financially burned in this space, lost a lot of money through lack of education and investing in the wrong people, most of them were scams. But I still believe in blockchain and I still believe in the crypto space, thanks to the investment club. Now, 5 weeks in, I've invested in 10 deals in the investment club. They do all the due diligence and research for the community by bringing the best deal flow that we would never have access to. When you join, you just don't become a member. You become a part of a big family. Don't let this opportunity pass you by. You will never find a more genuine person like Brian. He is so transparent and passionate at bringing wealth to the masses through blockchain technology. Thank you, Brian. It's a pleasure.
That's what's going on, and that's what I'm talking about as to why it was so critical to do something about that. Because everyone that I know that's doing social media over here, which is our alternative to the legacy media setup, is saying that they've been noting these things. It's almost like a last gasp thing. Let's try and do what we can before we lose it.
Yeah, it's a bit like Biden sending those missiles into Russia. And so so we were talking about those
first... That was dumb, by the way.
Yeah, I know. We're going to get to that, I think. So those first 100 days for Trump, I think you were talking about that, some of these appointments. What were your thoughts there?
I liked his Getz appointment, and he's a lawyer. He's done some work in the courtrooms, which is good. He's got more experience than most in that respect, since he has. And we need somebody who is into politics to rein in some of these alphabet agencies that we have in the United States, because they're getting much into that 90-year-old thing, 1934 bit we had in Deutschland, with some unfortunate folk that revised that Roman salute. So, and we just got an example of that with the cutoff. Now, I like it that somebody from outside who is not part of an entrenched bureaucracy gets to rein that bureaucracy in, get rid of the dead wood, get rid of those people who have gotten too ideologically comfortable with something that's out of touch with the American Republic. And I will say this, I am particularly concerned with the need for somebody to vigorously subdue the FBI and bring them back to where they're supposed to be. When I had that matter, being the last judge on the James Earl Ray matter, in other words, did he kill Dr. King? The answer was no. And it was without equivocation that the true culprits were the FBI. They arranged King being killed. It was J. Edgar Hoover who gave the orders. Wow. The FBI recruited a 2-man hit team from the Quantico Marine Sniper Station, or training school, which is just across the tarmac from their facility. It was a 2-man hit team that killed him from the fire station, not the flop house, not the bushes. It was planned that James Earl Ray was a convenient scapegoat, as were about 4 or 5 others. And when you have an American agency that does that kind of thing, something needs to be done, and it does not come from somebody who's within.
Right.
He's appointed a woman who seems to be nominally qualified, but in my 50 years of doing what I've done in the criminal justice system, I have come to severely distrust career prosecutors. She may be an exception to the rule, and I know some who have been. But generally, career prosecutors are not good people because they've gotten jaded. They've seen their colleagues make fortunes in the practice of law. Meanwhile, they're still on civil servant salary. They've been doing something for 25, 30 years. They've become cynical, jaded, and it's like a funeral home director. You hear an ambulance and people going, oh my God, I hope nobody got hurt. And the director's going, business. You see, they have a wrong mindset. So maybe she'll prove okay, but somebody needs to rein this industry in that is operated by the Justice Department, that keyword justice, which means justice for all in the American system, not just prosecuting showpiece crooks and trying to deal with imposition of a political outlook by bringing sham politically motivated prosecutions against people who aren't towing the party line. See, so we need somebody like that, and I'm glad of his choices. Now, I knew one of his previous choices before, Miss DeVos, who had been Secretary of Education. Now, I knew her because my ex-wife and her were friends, and the lady and her husband, who was one of the was the Mary Kay Cosmetics heir, would come over to a house I had up in Aspen, Colorado, ski resort area. And she was a good person. She was very enthused about youth and children, set up a lot of programs. She had no formal experience nor education nor employment when it came to educating children, but she had the right kind of drive and was looking at it from an outside perspective. So that kind of thing is not bad to bring to bear. It's like even the president himself, outside of our particularized examples like General George Washington, General Ulysses Simpson Grant, General Ike Eisenhower, for the most part, are presidents who happen to be also the commander-in-chief of the U.S. military, mighty as it has become, have been civilians in their background, so they don't bring the expertise of the particular department into play. They just understand the aspects of it as a political instrument. What did Clausewitz say, the general? War is but the ultimate extension of the political process, so it makes good sense that the commander-in-chief understands the political process because he is the political and functional administrative head of the U.S. government, therefore commander-in-chief. But just like the commander-in-chief does not have to be part of the military, nor does the person who runs a cabinet office or cabinet agency necessarily need to be part of that bureaucracy. In fact, we have an intense need to have some people outside of those bureaucracies who will put them in check because they have gotten too powerful when they answer to no one except themselves. So I approve of what Trump's doing.
And Judge, what do you think about this DOGE, Department of Government Efficiency, headed by Elon and Vivek Ramaswamy?
I think it's a good thing. I have had countless examples of people I went to school with, myself in my early days, or other people. We've had this thing, well, are you still getting a check from the government? Yeah, man. I mean, I haven't worked for them since I did that intern thing, and it's been a year and a half, but I'm still getting a check. Why? Well, they said if they cut the check off, the money for the next round will be reduced, so I haven't showed up for work in a year and a half, but I get a paycheck. Okay, or you see these things, especially in our Defense Department. Well, pilots do their touch and goes and stuff with the heavy equipment, B-52s, B-1s, B-2s, etc. So go back up and do 4 more laps. We've completed it, but we haven't used up enough fuel. Well, don't we want to save that? No. If we don't burn it, they won't pay for it next year. So you need to cut out those billions of dollars that are wasted because of the bureaucratic mindset. So I think that would be good. Ramaswamy, a billionaire, Elon Musk, the richest man in the world, you would have people who have expertise on managing large industrialized concerns, and the crew, elite crew that they want to assemble to cut back on the frivolous expenses. Like, for example, in the United States military, we're putting ourselves into a situation where we might have a conventional set to with an equal party, and we don't need a fact in place like we haven't built an M2 Bradley chassis in 30 years, nor an M1 tank chassis in 30 years. But every time somebody gets sexually reassignment surgery, the process costs the taxpayers essentially the price of a brand new Bradley or most of an unequipped M1 tank chassis, which needs to be upgraded since it's 40 some years old anyway. You see, these expenses need to be apprised, and we need efficiency because the money is just getting ridiculous that we're spending.
Now, the critics say they're not going to be able to do as much as they want. They're not going to be able to pull an Elon walking into Twitter and cut out 80%. They say, a lot of that budget is entitlements. You can't cut back on that. What do you say to those critics?
Well, yeah, you have a point there. Plus, one of the aspects of civil service is you just can't fire a typical civil service employee without good cause. But what you can do is change the administrative circumstances so that people can be free to do what some have been threatening. If Trump gets elected, I'm leaving the country. Bye-bye. Or I'm resigning from the FBI. I'm resigning from this if they get in. Good. We need you to go try the real world for a change. You've been in this insular community for 27 years now. It's
I think
time to move on.
Vivek's plan is to make them show up for work, and he thinks that'll cut out 50% of the workforce.
That might.
That's an interesting idea. Moving on to Bobby Kennedy. And also Jay Bhattacharya has just been announced for National Institute of Health, I believe. Bobby kind of running the whole thing. What are your thoughts there? Because apparently he's not going to play around. He's going to clean that whole house.
Well, yeah. You see, here's the thing. You have a continuity in any bureaucracy, the people that are always there, particularly in the United States where they tend to be civil service. So there is a continuity of culture, but every now and then somebody comes in at the top, wants to redirect things. So there's a tension between the establishment, so to speak, and the new drive. So that tends to, in my experience, promote some efficiencies, reorganizations, and some reconceptualizations of, shall we say, objectives. It's a good thing.
And do you think we can make America healthy again? Do you think?
I think we can.
Really? How bad is it, would you say, Judge? How bad is it?
I think what happened with the last time with COVID-19 is we fell into what I call the sci-fi trap. If you examine sci-fi for the last 100 years, the plot is usually the same. The public won't understand, so you lie to them so they don't panic. And what wound up happening is exactly that. Some misinformation was conveyed to the public. When it started developing that wasn't accurate, there was a distrust. So people just said, we're not believing anybody. And instead of saying, somebody's trying to save us, you're saying somebody is trying to manipulate us. What are they trying to manipulate us for? Because we don't trust them. Their motives are probably unholy. Therefore, you get a lot of public distrust. Now, the public was not told on the front, this is very dangerous. We aren't quite sure what the devil's going on. We have these alternatives. We will be very candid with you about all that's on the table that we know about. They didn't do that, and that was a bad thing. So that set up a system of distrust. So it didn't work. Now, I grew up in a time when everybody wanted the vaccinations because they hadn't invented the polio vaccine, and that was a horrible crippler around the world, particularly in the southern United States or areas where it got warm. So I remember people leaving the cities when there would be a polio epidemic, and when they came up with the Salk vaccine, then everybody was fighting to get in line to get the shots. And we knew, our parents knew, that every 100,000 or so people, there was going to be a tragedy, but they were used to Korea, World War II, World War I, and there still might have been a Civil War veteran somewhere kicking around loose, and frontier veterans abounded, so death was not unknown to the public, and nor was adverse risk. So they accepted it, but not now, because we are used to a safety bubble where our well-being is supposedly guaranteed. We have few who remember the flu epidemic of 1918, which originated in the United States, even though it was called the Spanish flu. I think Spain was the only country that was not involved in that World War I trench fracas, but it is what it is. So I think there is a need to restore confidence. I think Kennedy can do that.
And what about the food supply? He's looking at that. You know, I guess you spent a lot of time going to these areas of the U.S. and maybe when you were campaigning some of these rural areas. How bad is obesity for adults and for kids? Do you think he can reverse that?
It's going to be a cultural thing. I call attention to Sports Illustrated. I remember when Sports Illustrated came out. In fact, my old man bought the first magazine, all right? So it was all of these hyper-fit young men who were track stars, football players, basketball players, baseball players, you name it, swimmers. And then I remember, because I bought one of the magazines, it was the first swimsuit illustration. So they had these beautiful, fit women who matched the fit young men. I played football at the time, so I paid attention to it. So fit girls, fit boys. Nowadays, the boys are still fit because they play the sports, they're in good shape, but now they've got these drastically overweight femmes in there that are supposed to be de-objectifying beauty. And it doesn't work out because that's also coincidental with being unhealthy if you're too big to run from your front door to the sidewalk. And I think there is a cultural thing coming back, and I will give you this as an illustration. A certain lady friend of mine that I've known for years, and she used to be drop dead gorgeous in her younger years, called me up and said, "Joe, Judge, can you help me? My granddaughter needs somebody to talk to her." I said, "Sure." She said, "Well, I can get her on the line. Hold on." So I was on this three-way. So I'm saying, "Baby, what is the problem?" My grandmother stopped me from being beautiful." "What are you talking about?" "Tell her, baby, tell Judge, baby, why I stopped you from eating more than a half loaf of white bread." She said it would get me fat. I said, "But I wanted to be beautiful like Lizzo." Lizzo is that rather well-endowed singer that is prone to appear places she shouldn't appear that way naked. So you see, that's an image problem that they're spreading out there. So I apparently had what I had to say, and the young girl respected me. She'd seen me on TV, so I'm a celebrity, but she never heard this before. So the last I heard from the grandmother is she is once again playing sports, and she's doing all right. That's been 3 years ago. So now I think she's in high school, so she's doing better. You have to spread this word, and somebody has to say, no, this isn't cool.
Yeah.
This is those people that wanted to spread this whole thing, which is why you can't find a boyfriend, why your mother is frustrated, why your brother is talking stuff that is going to get him put in jail or thrown out of school.
Yeah. I want to get to the masculinity because it's really important. Just let me finish on Trump. Do you worry for his safety? That's number one. Number two, do you think the first 100 days will be very impressive? Or do you think that right now the leftists are digging in and they're really going to put up a fight to slow him down any way possible?
I think what you just said is going to be the reality, but I think he's going to do well. I keep up with presidents, and what I have used as a barometer for the last 50-some years is how many pages of proposed legislation or programs do they walk into the White House with on day one? And Trump's already set up his crew. They're in operation. They've got a lot of stuff drafted. I think they will go far, and they have that mandate. Now, on the other hand, Barack Obama, I was very much aware of the circumstances attendant upon him. He walked in the White House with absolutely nothing in writing or proposed, even though he had, and he didn't come up with anything except what Geithner wrote for that bailout bill to various failed corporations. But I think Trump has the momentum. I think since he is not trying to please anybody but the public, he'll do what's necessary. Biden, Obama, Clinton, Bush. The problem with them is they were too closely related, literally, and too much wrapped up in the business interest where they viewed being in the White House or as a stepping stone to what was going to happen after. I call their relationship into question. Now, there is a person you should look up. His name is Samuel Hinckley, Hinckley, late of Cape Cod, America. Samuel Hinckley had 7 of his descendants who were U.S. presidents, 1 who was a vice president, several who were governors, and several who are billionaires. And when I say who are, they're still alive. So you had the spectacle of George Herbert Walker Bush, President of the United States, having a first cousin who was the grandfather of a future president. That's Barack Obama's maternal grandfather, was George Herbert Walker Bush's first cousin. So George Walker Bush is Barack Obama's cousin. Dick Cheney, vice president of the company firm Halliburton, vice president of the United States and CEO of Halliburton, is also cousin to the Bushes and to Obama. Sarah Palin, who was John McCain's running mate when he ran against Barack Obama, she was Obama's cousin because they were all nieces and nephews of a gentleman by the name of George Herbert Walker, who founded Halliburton and set up Zapata Oil, which was a holding, well, not a holding company, but a company that George Herbert Walker Bush set up. Then he set up Zapata Offshore Oil, which was incorporated in Kuwait. In 1990, when Saddam Hussein went in to take back Kuwait and naturalized everything, the Bush family enterprise was essentially broke. When Gulf War I went down and was completed, they were no longer broke. They had Zapata Offshore Oil, Inc. restored. Barack Obama's mother, who wound up running a few things, not much, was a pawn under his grandmother who dispensed funds for the CIA. It's acknowledged now. Out of the bank, she wound up vice president over in Hawaii in the Southwest Pacific. She was familiar with an individual by the name of Lolo Sotoro, who ran the contract operations for espionage for the U.S. government in China, North Korea, North Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos, and also ran the death squads for the Indonesian government. As a matter of fact, he was wanted at one time for allegedly being responsible for killing 500,000 Indonesians. He also was international vice president of Standard Oil and was familiar with the Bushes and a few other people in terms of his oil business. So Standard Oil wanted to get into Indonesia.
To continue watching the rest of the episode for free, visit our website londonreal.tv or click the link in the description below.
Hey, I know investing in crypto is scary. It takes a real leap of faith because there are so many scams, rug pulls, and bad actors out there. It's a dangerous business, which is why 95% of people lose all their money. Well, that's why I created the London Real Investment Club, so you can access the hottest deals on the planet and use the crypto bull market to create the generational wealth that you deserve. Join my team of over 100 people from around the world that are making millions of dollars behind the scenes investing in blockchain, AI, Web3 games, DeFi, Bitcoin, and more. Don't miss out. Click the link below to book a call with one of my team now. But hurry, this bull market will end soon.
I know investing in crypto can be scary. That's why you gotta join the investment club. Pull the trigger. Let's do this.